I'm Dr. Faye Hargrove, and welcome to the first section of your iPromise Premarital Coaching Program. Let me start by congratulating you. Let's get the screen going here. Your decision to invest in your lifetime relationship is a serious one. The fact that you are taking the time now to learn about one another, to learn about how to negotiate or navigate through the challenges of being a married couple is really an important decision. You know, the fact that you might have already been living together for a while, or maybe you have been in a relationship for a long time, really is important. But when you enter into a marriage, the contract changes. Everything that you do impacts the other person, as you've probably already figured out. But it's under different terms now, once the legal arrangement of marriage and the long-term commitment that goes along with that is involved. And so congratulations on deciding to invest by participating in this program. The other thing I'd like you to know is we want you to be in the other half. What does that mean? 50% or half of all marriages in this country end in divorce. We want you to be in the other half. And by taking time to participate in this program, it means that you're going to go through a process of self-discovery, of learning what are your own personal needs, and learning about yourself, and also learning about your partner, so that when there are times when you don't agree, you'll know how to disagree, or you'll know how to come to a compromise. And so you're going to come to understand just in what ways you're similar in the ways that are important, and what ways you're different in the ways that are important, and how to live with those similarities and with those differences. So the objective of this particular section are several. First of all, we want you to be aware of the components of this program. And so we're going to be talking for a few minutes about what you should expect in terms of the courses and the timeline, the dates, the outcome of this particular program. So we're going to spend some time going through all of the dates and giving you a description of each of the sessions. Now, as part of your program, you have an opportunity to choose those sessions that are most relevant to your situation. You'll hear about those, but you'll also hear about some of the others, because you can always opt to increase the number of sessions that you are participating in by adding some more sessions. We also would like for you to consider the question of why are you getting married? You'd be surprised at how many people answer that question on a superficial level, but really don't take time to understand how the marriage is serving them, how they're meeting particular needs by getting married. And we're going to take time to actually explore those needs, because research has shown that those marriages that meet the needs of the partners in the marriage are actually the marriages that last. So we're going to spend some time talking about needs. And I need to go the right way with this. Okay, so we're going to begin with the discussion of what are your individual needs, and how are you looking to get those met within the marriage. The truth is, if your needs aren't met within the marriage, you'll either suffer or you'll go outside of the marriage to get those needs met. And so it's important for us to really understand those needs and talk about them in terms of your marriage as a partnership. Think about if you decided to go into business with a couple who are your best friends, and let's say you decided to buy a franchise together. There's certain expectations that you would have as partners in business. Well, the partnership of your marriage also has expectations. And so we're going to explore the marriage as a partnership in terms of two people in an agreement with one another, and what that outcome looks like, what you expect of one another in terms of that partnership. Now, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I got married in 1981, so you can see the picture there of my husband and me in 1981 when we got married. So we're in our 35th year of marriage, produced two wonderful human beings. They're our adult children now, Chanel and Cameron. I consider that to be one of our greatest accomplishments as a couple, that we raised two children who are happy and healthy. I'm not saying that we had a perfect marriage, that we have a perfect marriage, or that we have a perfect family. What I'm saying is that we have learned over the years to do that, sometimes the hard way, and some ways to do things and some ways not to do things. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing with you the wisdom that I've gained over 35 years of marriage and having raised a 31-year-old and now a 25-year-old. My degree in psychology is from the University of Georgia. So I do have a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. So I know about human behavior. I know about the principles of psychology that we're going to bring to bear in your program today, and going forward. Now, for the last 18 years, I've been a coach. What does that mean? In high school, back in the dark ages, I played basketball, and my coach, Donna Woods, had to work with me on my foul shot because it was pretty foul. And what she taught me was how to do my wrists and hold my hands, position my feet, where to focus my eyes. So she gave me the tools that I needed in order to be excellent at shooting foul shots. Now, I never really became that excellent because of a lack of raw talent. But what she taught me was how to model excellence using specific tools. And so that is the approach that we're going to take with you with your coaching program. We're going to teach you how to model excellent marriages, teach you the resources that they use in order to maintain the marriage over a lifetime, over a sustained period. And so by modeling excellence, I, as your coach, will lead you through the process of learning to establish a long-term relationship with the tools that you need. And those include self-discovery, learning about your partner, and then developing some specific resources to help you with your marriage. So we're looking forward to this journey together. Also, as your coach, you need to know that I am accessible to you by email and by telephone, by Twitter. It's Ask Dr. Faye. And at the very last slide of this presentation has the phone number and has my email address, as you already know because you've received emails at this point. And also, I'd love if you could follow me with Twitter. Now, I'm kind of old school, so I'm learning how to do all the tweet stuff. And also like our Facebook pages, iPromise Coaching. Now, there are a few ground rules for today's program. And let me get to that slide. As we go through the session today, I'd like for you to, let's follow the acronym WRAP. And that is, we're going to respect each other's opinion. You've probably figured out by now that you don't agree 100% on everything. So whose opinion is correct? You probably think yours is correct. Your partner thinks theirs is correct. But the number one ground rule here is that we're going to respect each other's model of the world. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but respect it, and respect the fact that there are possibly as many opinions in the room as there are people in the room, in your room right now. And so we're going to at least respect the other person's opinion. The second ground rule is that, and I can't see here because my screen is in the way. The A in the WRAP acronym is access to your coach. And so you have access to me between sessions if you have questions. And, there might come a time, or there might be a situation where questions emerge during our conversation where you may or may not want your partner to be aware of what you're thinking. You need to work through some things before you have a discussion with them. Then feel free to contact me and I can help you through those sessions. The other thing is access, and this is a very practical issue, and that's access during this presentation. So if you look on your dashboard there, you have the opportunity to raise your hand, And right now you're muted, but I have the potential just so that you can talk back and forth with one another, and we don't have to worry about the background noise going on in your house. But we can unmute, and you can ask questions verbally, and you can also type in your question. So if you type in your question there, I'll be able to see it and answer it. So you can ask questions either by unmuting your microphone. And actually, I have you muted, so you might need to type in a question. In fact, you do need to type in the question and say, "Would you unmute me?" And I'll take the mute off, and we can have a discussion back and forth. And the last, the R in the WRAP acronym, I'll move this over so I can see what I have, is privacy. Believe it or not, as a couple, you're going to share a lot of things. You're going to share most things, but there are going to be some things, there's some information that you probably won't share with one another. There's some information that you don't need to share with one another. And so I'm going to respect your privacy, and I ask that you respect each other's privacy also. And so we're going to have some conversations about what that might look like going forward. You might already be in the habit of doing things like checking one another's cell phones. I'm going to tell you right from the start that is an indication of lack of trust. So if you're starting the relationship not trusting one another, we've got a lot of work to do. So we're going to respect each other's opinions, even though they might vary from their others. Know that you have access to your coach, and I'm here as a resource for you. And we are, let's see, I moved a little bit too soon. And we're going to respect each other's privacy. Deal? Great. Okay, so let's go back and talk about what your program looks like. This is session 1, which is the program orientation. There are 12 hours in your coaching session. This hour is the orientation, and I've talked a little bit about what the objectives are, what we're going to accomplish during this hour. In the next hour, which is session 2, we will discuss the results of your Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Now, at the end of the session, you're going to get an email with the link to go and take the Myers-Briggs. Hopefully you have your iPromise, there you go, your iPromise notebook. And so you will get your report, your Myers-Briggs report, which is over a 20-page report. And your Myers-Briggs report will be emailed to you in advance of the next session. And so what will happen in the next session is that we will take a look at your profile, your Myers-Briggs profile. There's 16 possible letter combinations that you can have, and we'll look at your particular profile and your mate's profile. And we'll talk about what does that mean? How are you similar? How are you different? How do you work with your individual profiles to understand one another's ways of making decisions, of handling conflict? You know, I'll tell you, my husband and I took the Myers-Briggs after we were married about 15 years. And if I had had that information early on in the marriage, I would have stopped trying to change him. Because what it did for me was help me understand that his way of seeing the world is completely different from mine. And as much as I might want him to think like me, it wasn't going to happen. So once I learned his perspective and I understood how he processed information, how he made decisions, how he handled conflict, and how he managed change, then it helped us to work together as partners and not to be in conflict because his style didn't match mine or my style didn't match his. And so taking a look at the personality inventory, again, will give you an opportunity to self-reflect and also learn about your partner. In the third session, we will begin the work of one of the fundamental components of your coaching program. And that is, I will be taking you through a process of clearing out any stored baggage, any stored negative emotions, any stuff from your past, from your childhood, from previous relationships that will interfere with what you will be doing going forward. Now, we can't change what has happened in the past. You might have had a tragic childhood. You might have had the ideal childhood. You might have had wonderful relationships in the past. You might have been heartbroken in the past. We can't change the past, but what we can do is change what we feel about it and what we think about it. And so the Fresh Perspectives Letting Go program is part of our Better Choices program, where we will walk you through. I'm here and I will talk you through and walk you through the actual process of letting go of anger. Any anger that you might have from previous relationships, from your childhood, you don't need to take forward, because every decision that you make today, in every moment, gets filtered through all of the stuff from your past. And so we don't want you to go into a fresh relationship with old baggage. And so you got to let go of all anger, and not be able to take that, not have to take that into your relationship. You're going to let go of all hurt and sadness. And so why, future husband, why do you need to take her heartbreak into your new relationship? So the old joker broke her heart, but that's over and done with, and it has nothing to do with you, right? And so you want to make sure that your relationship with her is not built on any hurt from the past. And the same thing, new bride. You want to make sure that any any stuff from his previous relationships don't filter, don't carry on into your relationships. And so it's important that we let go of that anger, that sadness, and also the fears and insecurities. Fears and insecurities show up in some pretty interesting ways in your marriage. Things like checking cell phones, and jealousy is based on fear. There's a fear of loss of the other person, loss of their attention, loss of them in the relationship. Fear of losing the other person causes you to make some pretty crazy decisions sometimes. And so if you can go into your relationship without that degree of fear, then you're going to love one another and relate to one another from a basis of peace and comfort and joy. And that's a very different place of building a relationship than one based on fear, anger, and sadness. You're also, in the Letting Go Perspectives, Fresh Perspectives program, you're going to let go of any guilt. The point is, we've all made mistakes in the past, but we have to forgive ourselves and move on. So any guilt that you might be bringing forward into this particular marriage, you need to let it go. So we'll help you do that. And finally, you'll let go of any self-doubt, any limiting beliefs or limiting decisions. Decisions like, I can't have a healthy marriage. I don't know what a healthy marriage looks like. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. All of that self-doubt that is part of your programming now, all of the negative self-talk, all of the voices from people, and maybe in your family, from the society, saying that your marriage is not going to last because marriages don't last. You need to not go into a relationship with negative expectations. So what we're going to do is reprogram your thinking so that you're confident about who you are, first of all. When you're confident and comfortable with who you are, then you can love from a different place and actually be tolerant from a different place of not only your shortcomings, which you do have, believe it or not, but also the shortcomings of your mate, which I'm sure you're very aware of. And so just to summarize, and we're going to spend 2 sessions working on this. In session 3, we'll let go of anger, sadness, and your fears and insecurities. And then in session 4, we'll let go of your guilt and your self-doubt. And then we'll actually talk about what this new, fresh perspective can look like in your marriage. So that's sessions 1 through 4. Now, sessions 5 and 6 are an individual conversation with me. We'll schedule those at your convenience, and you can set the topic for those. You can do it together or you can do it individually. And so if she wants a session with me and he wants a session with me, then you can use your 2 hours in that way, or if you want it together. But after you've been through sessions 1 through 4, I'm guessing that some issues will emerge, not necessarily negative issues, but some information will emerge in which you'll want to have some deeper conversation about. And so sessions 5 and 6 will be 2 hours where we're together, and it could be on the phone, it could be Skype, FaceTime, webinar, whatever you need, and we'll work with the time of day that you need. And the beauty of online coaching is that you don't have to be in the same room together. You both can log in to the webinar, and you're both there present. in the conversation. And so that session, those are sessions 1 through 6. Now in session 7, it's the first of the, okay, let me go back to this. It's the first of the sessions where you are able to choose the topic that you're interested in choosing. And let me see if I can get to this so I can see it. And session 7 is actually, okay, bear with me. Close this out because you can see what I can't. Okay, session 7 is couples finance. One of the major reasons that couples get divorced is because of trouble over finances. And so we're going to start right out with a conversation about finances. You may not be aware of how to create a budget together. You may not be aware of how to combine your finances if you've been living as separate individuals. You know, one of the important lessons that my husband and I learned early on is that we cannot share a checking account. Our spending styles are so different that we each need our own checking account. Now, we pool our resources, but we had to discuss early on what that pooling is going to look like. We're going to talk about two different perspectives. There's the Susie Orman perspective that says you need to separate your finances, and then there's the Dave Ramsey perspective that says that you need to work together and have one account. We're going to discuss how managing the finances of your household needs to work for you so that you have a healthy operating process for managing your finances. We're going to talk about how to save, how to minimize debt or eliminate debt so that your finances do not present a source of friction in your marriage. In session 8, we're going to talk about communication tools. What are your ways of communicating that get you heard or get you not heard? So you're going to take an instrument called the OD, where we'll determine whether or not you're an owl, a dolphin, an elephant, or an eagle. And your partner will understand if you're speaking elephant and they're speaking owl, just how to translate that. And because another reason why marriages break up is because of difficulty in communicating. Not because there's a lack of a desire to want to be together, but I don't get you, you don't get me. I don't understand what you're saying. I can't get my point across to you. And so we want to address head on your communication style so you understand how the other person perceives your communication style. And we want you to understand their communication style. And so hopefully at the end of that session, you are speaking the same language. In session 9, we'll discuss role expectations. So that means, what part are you expected to play in the partnership? What part do you expect your partner to play in the partnership? It's simple things like who's going to do the cooking and who's going to wash the dishes? Who makes the decisions about one thing or another? Now, you'd be surprised how, if you don't discuss this, it comes up later on in the marriage. And so being clear up front about your expectations. You know, if you were raised in very different households with different expectations about what the wife did and what the husband did, you need to know that right up front, and you need to be clear on what those expectations are before you get down the road and get surprised. In session 10, we're going to talk about a very important topic of breaking generational curses. Now, what does that mean? The way I define it, a generational curse is something that happened in your parents' marriage, in your household as you were growing up, that you do not want to bring forward. It could have been abuse. It could have been addiction. Your parents might have gotten divorced. There might be a history of or a lack of a history of long-term relationships in your family. And so what we want to do is learn from those situations so that we don't perpetuate it. One of the definitions of insanity, they say, is that if you keep on doing the same thing in the same old way and expecting a different outcome, then that's insanity. And so we're not going to do marriage or relationships in the same way. We're going to teach you different ways of doing it. And we're not going to do parenting in the same way. How do you break that cycle of abuse so that you don't become the abuser that was in your household, so that you don't become the addict that was in your household, so that you don't become the divorced couple that was in your household. And so we're going to actually address those issues head on and give you tools for breaking those generational curses. Now, if you chose second marriages as a workshop, session 11 is all about second marriages. Now, the fact that this is a second marriage probably means that the first marriage didn't work, unless, of course, you're a widow or a widower. In either case, there's something that can be learned from your first marriage that can be either brought into your second marriage because it was positive and it worked, or that you can avoid because it didn't work. And so we're going to take the time to actually identify what are those issues, what are those tools and resources, so that we can do it better the second or third or fourth, whatever time you're on. Our point is that we want you to have a long-term, lasting marriage this time. Session 12 has to do with marriage God's way. Whatever your perspective, my perspective happens to be Christian. I believe that we are the best in a relationship when we bring our best person to the relationship. And so we're going to talk about how to be the person that God created you to be, so that you can be the best person in the relationship. And so we're not going to talk about any particular theology. We're going to talk about being who God created you to be, so that your marriage can be the kind of marriage that honors God. In session 13, we're going to talk about setting shared goals. You'd be surprised how many couples don't actually discuss where they're headed. What will our marriage look like 10 years from now? What will our lives look like 10 years from now? Do we want children? How many do we want? Where do we want to live? What do we want with our careers? Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the habits is that you begin with the end in mind. In other words, you talk about where you think you're headed from the beginning. And so really taking the time to consider, where are we headed with our lives, with our marriage, with our families, and setting some goals. So we will actually set SMART goals for your future. We'll use a tool called mind mapping, which is fun. And so in your iPromise program, we would have sent you, if you chose that session, we would have sent you some markers and your iMap form, so that you can actually start mapping out your shared goals together. That's a fun session. The session on romance and sexuality is fun also. No marriage is healthy or complete without discussing the issue of romance and sexuality. And so in terms of setting expectations, what will romance look like in your marriage? What are your expectations for sex? What does that look like? So we'll need to actually talk about that. You'll need to explore that with one another. And we'll talk about some healthy ways and some tools for negotiating and navigating the discussions, the practices, and the processes, whatever it is that needs to happen here. Blended families. The truth of the matter and the reality of today's society is that a lot of you who are getting married are bringing children into the marriages. You already have children, and maybe both of you have children. So how do you ensure that you can integrate the families in a way that's healthy and will lead toward you're being able to sustain the relationship? Who does the disciplining in the family? And so if there are stepchildren involved, you really need to talk about, we need to explore what that means in terms of disciplining the children, and in terms of co-parenting. What are the rules there, and what's going to happen? And so, we'll discuss blended families. We'll answer your questions, and we can get as specific as you need to. If that needs to be one of the conversations that you have up in sessions 5 or 6, we can do that with the topic of blended families, or with any of the topics. And then in session 16, we're going to talk about managing conflicts. One of the things I know about your marriage, there will be conflict. There will be times when you don't agree, when you are in direct opposition to one another. So what happens? How do you handle that? It's going to be helpful for each of you to know how you approach conflict. There are people who don't handle conflict at all, and there are others who go head on in a conflict. And so once you understand from the Myers-Briggs and from all of the other sessions that you've experienced up to that point, how your partner handles conflict. When there is conflict in the marriage, then you'll know how to handle it. Now, conflict is actually a good thing. If there's never any conflict, that means that there's only one opinion there, and you never disagree. And that's not a healthy relationship. And so where you have a healthy relationship, you're going to have conflict because you're going to have disagreement. Where you have two thinking minds, you're going to have conflict. So the question is, how do you manage it so that it's healthy and so that it actually moves the marriage forward? Because conflict, disagreement can result in your moving the marriage forward. So those are the 16 sessions. In each of those, remember the ground rules. We will respect each other's opinion. You have access to me as your coach. And what was the third one? You tell me. Tell one another. Excellent. Okay. So let's move forward in this session. Here's the question. Why are you getting married? Why get married? Why get married to this person? I'd like for you to take about 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes. So think as fast as you can. Jot down as many as you can. And I'd like for you to jot down all the reasons that marriage is an appealing idea to you right now. So I'm going to start the clock, and you can go ahead and start jotting down. Okay, take a few more seconds. Great. Great. Now, you each wrote down your reasons for getting married. I wonder if you can spend a few minutes actually talking to one another about about those reasons. Take about 3 minutes and just review each other's lists. In fact, you don't have to talk about it. Just take a look, take a minute and review each other's lists. We'll have time to talk about what's on the list. You might find some things interesting, or you might be completely aware and there are no surprises there at all. So take about a minute and look at each other's lists. Okay. Any aha moments? Any insights? Good. Okay, so now what I'd like to know is really, why are you getting married? I'll bet that some of the reasons that you gave, they were good enough reasons. But let's dig a little bit deeper. If we dig a little bit deeper into each of those reasons, we'll really get to the needs that you're trying to meet with a marriage. Here's the thing. We're going to talk about needs a little bit more specifically in a few minutes. But in getting married, the reason that we get married is because it meets a set of needs that we have. So what are those needs? Now, I'm not going to ask you to share this particular list. Not at this time anyway. Maybe somewhere down the road you might want to talk about it. But as you think about marrying him, or as you think about marrying her, why do you really want to get married? What needs are you going to meet by being married to this person? What appeals to you? And I also, in this particular exercise, want you to think about what scares you about getting married at this point to this person. So this is going to take a little bit more thinking on your part. And I'd like you to take about 5 minutes this time to actually think about why. Okay, great. How was that? I'll bet you had an opportunity to actually think about um, a level of understanding about why you're getting married that maybe you hadn't considered before. Let's talk a little bit about your needs and this partnership that you're about to enter. There's a definition of marriage that it is a contract between two individuals that unites them legally, economically, and emotionally. Marriage really is a partnership. And when you think about a partnership has a purpose. So I mentioned earlier about the idea of going into partnership with a couple who are friends of yours to start a business, buy a franchise. And the purpose of that partnership would be to make money with your business, right? And so if as we think about marriage as a partnership, the purpose of the partnership is the management of a shared life. So our intent is to share a life together, to have a healthy, sustained relationship throughout life. And so the purpose of the partnership is to manage that life. And so when we talk about what will be the roles that each of you will take in that shared life, how will you just handle conflict? How will you manage your situations that you find yourself in with blended families? All of those have to do with managing the partnership that is your marriage. Now, the management of the partnership is based on, well, actually, I'd like you to spend a couple minutes together just talking about the notion of partnership. React to one another about your opinion of whether or not you agree with this partnership notion or you disagree with this partnership notion. Now, pay attention to whether or not this is something that you need to have a follow-up discussion with me on in sessions 4 and 5 when we talk individually. So just spend some time now talking about the notion of marriage as a partnership, whether or not you agree with that and why, and also whether or not you disagree with that and why. Take about another minute, and then we'll go on to talk about meeting your needs. Okay. Now remember, although our session is limited to an hour, your time together is not limited to that 1 hour. And so if you need to continue the discussion about the notion of marriage as a partnership, please do. And also keep in mind that if this is one of the topics that you need to discuss in our one-on-one session, then we should do that. Okay? I want to spend some time talking about the concept or the notion of you're getting your needs met. Here's a basic fact. Behind every action is a thought, and behind every thought is a desire of some kind. So think about actions that you might have taken today. Let's say you got up and you went to the refrigerator. Behind that action was a thought, right? I'm going to the refrigerator. And it was not just because the refrigerator is there, but because there was a desire of some kind. Maybe you were hungry, you wanted a snack, you wanted food. The desire for food caused you or motivated you to engage in a behavior, which was to get up and go to the refrigerator to seek food. That is psychology 101. Basic human nature is motivated by needs. All of our actions, all of our thoughts are connected to our needs. Research has shown that marriages where the couples understand their needs and work to make sure that their needs are met in the marriages are healthy marriages. Now, you shouldn't look for someone else to meet all of your needs. That's not what I'm saying. But in a marriage, the situation should satisfy your needs. And what happens is that if your needs aren't being met in the marriage, you'll either suffer or you'll go outside of the marriage to get those needs met. Those unmet needs are the leading underlying reason behind most disputes and most of the arguments that couples have. And so let's say that let's say the husband has a need for and certain expectations for sex in the marriage. If those needs aren't met, there's going to be a problem. Let's say the wife has certain needs or expectations for romance in the marriage. If those needs aren't met, then there's going to be a problem. And so what I'd like for you to do now for the next few minutes is think about, what do you need from this marriage? What are your needs in terms of time together, in terms of the attention that you need your partner to give you, in terms of financial security, in terms of just whatever your needs are? I don't want to identify what you think is an expectation for what you want to get out of this marriage. But I'd like for you to spend 2 or 3 minutes beginning the process, and this is just a beginning of the process, of thinking about what is it that you need out of this marriage. So let's, starting now, just jot it down, and we will share this at some point. Not necessarily, we don't have that much time left in the webinar, but this is something that you'll need to discuss, and you'll need to understand each other's needs. Not that you're expecting to meet each, you're not in the marriage to complete one another. In fact, that's a myth. If you come to the marriage complete, you don't need someone to complete you. And so understanding your needs and understanding what you need to do to get your needs met is an important part of growing so that you can have a sustained marriage. So take a few minutes, take 2 or 3 minutes, and just make a list of what your needs are for your marriage. Now, early on in the session, I asked you to think about why you wanted to get married. And I asked the question twice. Why do you want to get married? And really, why do you want to get married? Now, as you consider what you wrote as a response to the second, why do you want to get married? And as you look at now what your needs are, how do they match up? Spend a few minutes on your own, each of you individually, thinking about whether or not the reason that you want to get married is at all related to what your needs are right now. So just take a couple minutes to do that. Great. How was that? Again, let me encourage you to have discussions around anything that you feel comfortable talking with one another about related to your needs, identification, and the why I want to get married question. Also remembering to respect each other's privacy at this point, because we're still in the process of self-discovery and learning about the other person. So let's understand where you might need to draw the line in terms of prying and wanting to know what the other person is thinking, and also where you need to draw the line in terms of sharing information at this point, respecting each other's opinions. Let's talk a little bit about the next session. In the next session, we're going to dig a little bit deeper in terms of understanding your similarities and your differences, and you're going to take the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. You'll receive a link which will instruct you to go to a web page. It's going to take you about 20 minutes to take the inventory. And please be as honest with yourself as you can as you're taking the instrument. I will email your report to you before the next session. You can take a look at it. You can have a discussion about it. We'll go into more detail. You don't have to spend any time with it. I mean, it's not homework in order for you to go over your report. And so I'm going to explain it to you in the next session and explain what your partner's profile means to you and your profile to your partner. And we're going to talk about it in the terms of how you manage conflict, how you make decisions, how you handle change, and how you manage stress and what that means for your relationship. So I hope the session has been helpful. I would love it. I'd love to get some feedback from you. The phone number to the office here is listed there. My email address is there. My Twitter handle, Ask Dr. Faye. Please go to the iPromise Facebook page and like us, put any comments that you have on there. And we look forward to seeing you next time.